Hey everyone, so excited to share with you the recruitment journey of one of our features, AJ, of Scott Humphrey. I'd love for AJ to kick things off by walking us through your background and journey in recruitment.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me, Dandan. So I run Scott Humphrey Corporation, launched a company about a year and a half ago. We focus on construction recruitment. Prior to launching Scott Humphrey, I worked for a global recruitment firm, ran construction operations for them. I was there for about 7 years. Started out as a junior consultant with no recruitment or sales experience and worked my way up to director before essentially transitioning into my own company. But that's essentially my recruitment journey in a nutshell.
Very cool. And I think you'll see a pattern with a lot of successful recruitment owners. They come from a lot of experience doing the job and like building their career at a large company, which seems to be one of the best routes to getting a successful career under your belt. And before you got into recruiting, what was your career back then and how did you transition?
Yeah. So it's not your typical transition into recruitment. So I find what's very common is either people graduate college maybe with a degree that has a little bit of focus on business or sales or even accounting, and then get headhunted by a recruitment company and go there. The other type of profile I've seen is people that come from a sales background, product sales, and they transition really well into consultative sales with recruitment. My journey was very different. So my career started in the military. I was in the Army for about 8.5 years. And then when I got out of the military, I joined the field that I was degreed in, which is procurement and supply chain. Worked for a big retailer, Target, running distribution operations for them for a little bit, and then joined an oil and gas company doing procurement and supply chain. A lot of spreadsheets and that kind of stuff, sitting in a corner cubicle or what have you. Interesting enough, my first exposure to agency recruitment was as a candidate within the oil and gas procurement supply chain space. And that's how I found out about it. I essentially got called by a manager slash recruiter at my previous employer, went and interviewed with them for the job I was looking for the job they were trying to headhunt me for. And then just through the conversation, it turned out I might get a 10K pay increase, but it's the same challenges I faced with my employer at the time that I would face there. And then essentially they started to ask them about what they did, and somehow ended up walking out with an offer. I still don't know how it really happened, but ended up walking out with an offer to join them, along with a significant pay cut. But it was worth it. And then I joined the company. I started out recruitment within the field I was in, procurement supply chain for oil and gas. Did really well there, and the rest was essentially history. But if I hadn't accidentally gotten that headhunt call, I wouldn't have known anything about recruitment. So, lucky.
And it's lucky for you to have found out that way. And believe it or not, that's actually super common. We've heard so many stories of like accountants who go similar to yourself. They go for that next job through their recruiter. And then the recruiter's like, actually, do you really want to do accounting? Do you really want to do this pretty difficult, not very exciting financially career? And then they pitch them on recruiting, just like yourself. They walk out kind of with that offer to do the job. And the biggest challenge, and why I'm sure a lot of people similar to yourself, they're professionals in a space, they meet a recruiting firm, the recruiting company is like, why don't you just do what we do? We'll hire you. The majority of people will still say no to that because they're not financially motivated or they don't see the opportunity. So for you, what made you take that cut in salary? What made you kind of, and can you give us an example of like what you were doing financially and why you justify that to yourself?
Sure. So I'll start with explaining a little bit of the motivation of why, or the reasoning behind accepting the cut. And, I got to give a lot of credit to the gentleman that tried to headhunt me, who actually became my boss for the entire 7 years I was with the other company. He was very consultative in the sense of asking me, what am I missing and what am I looking for? And then when we talked through it, the more and more we talked, the more and more I realized there was no merit in what I was doing, right? Like I could work my butt off and I have to wait on my boss to retire before the next promotion. You're competing for one slot along with a bunch of other people, stuff like the personal relationships your colleagues might have with your employees, or their background might have an impact. And the way recruiting was explained to me, just like most sales, I guess, consultative sales is it's 100% based on what you put in. So, are you somebody that's naturally very socially engaging and interested in being optimistic in the relationships that you have and building networks? And are you a person that actually has this, I like to call it the unjustifiable confidence and faith in your ability to actually succeed? So when we talked about that, that made me very interested in the recruitment industry. So he was great at selling that to me. Now, as far as the financial bit, yeah, it was a significant pay cut. I think I was on like $95,000 base salary at the time, which is good, and with bonuses and everything, I was very low six figures, like 100, 105. And I started out on 50K. So I actually took a 50% pay cut, which is huge, right? But it wasn't a pay cut. I compromised on my guaranteed for the upside potential. So like you can say you have faith in yourself to do well, but are you willing to bet your wallet, kind of deal? And I was. I don't know if it was the smartest thing to do at the time based on what everybody told me, but it absolutely paid off. So really, honestly, the first year within recruitment, my W-2 was still the same. I doubled my base salary and growth compensation. I was at 97K instead of the 105 the first year. But the biggest takeaway from that first year for me, Dandan, wasn't the amount of commissions I've made, which was great. It wasn't that I was, just 7K shy. It was the fact that I made 97,000 very first year in the industry and in the practice with zero experience before, versus the 105 or whatever that I made the year before with, 8 to 10 years of experience. So the upside was just tremendous there. And I believed that and continued with it. So, first year made like the 97K, and the exact numbers are not there, but by year 6, I was about, close to $250,000 in gross income. And it was consistent growth where year on year, is anywhere from 20 to 30% increase on my gross income. So yeah, it was a really good choice because, in recruitment, and that's something that I'm sure we'll touch on later, it's not just learning the processes. Like when you go in, you have that uphill battle of understanding how to be consultative because you're doing a double sell, right? It's not really sales. It is, you're very salesy, but it's a level above. It's consultative sales. You're solution selling, your expectation setting 100% of the time. Once you get past that, the structure and the little things like how do I organize my day? How do I prioritize my tasks? The entrepreneurial aspect of the job. Once you get past that, the more time you spend in a set industry or in a set market recruitment, the upside is huge because these relationships stay with you. So right. You get past the first year in recruitment in the same space, you're golden.
Right. And that's really exciting because I don't know how your old job would have been like. Do you think financially that could have happened in your old job to achieve 250 in 6 years? Was that even possible? Okay.
No, so I don't see how
a calculated bet.
Yeah, to be honest, Dandan, I don't know how to have made 250. Period. Not even in 6 years. Like, look, right. and the reason I know this for a fact now is because you got to remember I left that industry and immediately started recruiting in it. So like I got after the fact, but I got insight into what people are making, and I have placed VPs with 20, 25 years of experience in that exact space, working for better companies than the company I've worked with. Under 250K. So they might get to 250 total comp, but they're 5 years away from retirement. And like, what's the joy in that? You know what I mean? Like, I want to be able to spend the money I'm making. I don't want to, just make it 5 years and then retire. So no, it wasn't as feasible. It wasn't as feasible.
Right. In terms of the time required to get there, like you got there in 6 years instead of like the people you recruited for, they were like 20, 30 years your senior. So they got to the same place, but it took them a couple extra decades, which let's be honest, nobody wants that. Like that's just too much time. Yeah. So I think that's a really good example, like using data from the market.
And also another thing, Dandan, I will also make the argument that, sure, I got to 250 in 6 years, but actually if I hadn't stayed with my former employer, I would have gotten there faster. I genuinely believe that. But
Right.
because of my motivation to get into management versus just being a biller over and over again. It made sense for me to stay with the big player for a little bit longer,
Yep.
even if it didn't mean the financial. And I know it sounds crazy saying like you make close to 250 and it wasn't enough. It's not a greed thing. It's just a numbers fact, right? It's just a
Right.
fact. So if I had, let's say I've stayed for 2 years and I went and joined another company, a smaller shop billing my butt off, I would probably have gotten to 250 in 3 years versus six. And that's really the
Right.
potential within this industry. But, I wanted to stay there long enough to launch my own thing. And then, the numbers are astronomically different when you're running your own business. So it paid off for sure.
Yeah. That's so awesome. Again, I think you did the smart thing, which is learn and earn on someone else's dime and time. And they kind of invested in you as a manager. You learned all these things. So you're right, to your point. Like if you just left after year 3 to become an individual biller and started Scott Humphrey, then yeah, you could have more money, but you would also not have had the experience of growing. And so there's always that, like, it's that balance of like learning everything. And I think that's best practice, instead of just like, oh, I get 1 year under my belt and I'm gone, I'm just going to experiment. That's also too risky. So I think you were very smart. Yeah. And so what was your first 6 months like, being that you left something totally different and you had to do something totally different? So what was your first 6 months in recruiting really look like from an hours perspective and like a duties perspective?
Yeah. So I like to oversimplify it after the fact. It was trial and error, but the simplest way of looking at it is nobody was going to work harder or longer than I did the first 6 months. And that's just a fact, right? So I was in at the same time, if not before anybody else. I lived far away from the office, so traffic was terrible. So I would leave the house at 6:30 in the morning, be there by 7. And I would try to avoid even in traffic. So I'm not leaving the office until 7. So I worked about a 12-hour day. I had lunch at my desk. I'm not saying everybody should do this, but that's what I chose to do. Because also I had the motivation. I want to get back to where I was financially as quickly as I can. And then basically I looked at everybody that was at the top of the charts on the league table, and I'll just go and pick their brains or observe them. It's an open floor. I got to see how they talk to people. I try to position myself in the office where I'm near them so I can hear their conversations and literally just replicate. Like somebody told me, there is no original idea in recruitment. It's all been done, right? So like I didn't need to reinvent the wheel. I just follow everybody else was doing and do it more than them. So the first 6 months was about volume, get as much under my belt as possible. I don't care if you hang up on me. I don't care if you ignore me. I'm just going to keep going. And then through that, create the efficiencies. I think the mistake that I found a lot of new billers coming into recruitment make is they try to be as efficient as possible early, when that's not the way to do it. You create the volume and the efficiencies will follow. Like through trial and error, you will know how to leave a better voicemail. You know how to word a follow-up email or what have you. So, just to give you an idea of where I was, this is old school KPIs where our executive director at the time, the gentleman running the office, Hugh, he was a British gentleman. He would come up every Monday morning and talk to the office, and he'd have these printout sheets of like the interviews. And he'd say like, oh, this person got 2 interviews, great job. This person got 3 interviews, great job. And he's looking through like a sheet. And then he'd go through everybody. He'd come to me and he'd pull up like 3 full sheets of paper. And he says like, and these are AJ's interviews, right? I had a lot of stuff fall off. Like a lot of process didn't come. But even at when I was least efficient, I was still billing with the top billers because I just had more. And then after those 6 months, I became more efficient. I understood my market a little bit more. I knew who's hiring, who's not, who's moving quickly, who's not. I learned to not waste my time with the best I got and spend my time focusing on the best out there, right? To get better clients, better candidates. And the crazy thing is, once I created those efficiencies, I found that I can still work the same hours, but double the revenue. So you could slow down, arguably, but then I didn't. And, that's how I got to where I needed to go financially.
Awesome. I think that's such a great point, because I think too many people, they come in and they just look at the workload. I think it's an excuse, frankly, right? Yeah. Like, I don't want to do what AJ's doing. That just all looks too busy. I'd rather just focus on the things that really will move my business. And they have like a week into, how would you know? Right. Yeah. So I think it's very, very poignant fact that you knew that volume was still what you had to do to learn the shortcuts and to accelerate. So kudos to you for setting the pace and just having the courage to just throw it all in there and put your back into it.
It's what works for everyone.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's exactly what you had to do. And that's why your career accelerated so much faster than everybody else, because you have set the tone and the organization recognized early on that this is who we want to model the next generation after. And every generation has that person that's going to be the leader of that generation. And that's why, of course, like your career, just not only the billings, but just your career trajectory.
Yeah.
Like a lot of opportunities, you've unlocked them. Yeah. So what do you think was the hardest part, being that, you know, you were working really hard? It's kind of a weird question because you were working very hard, which obviously is hard, but what was the hardest thing that you found about recruiting? And what are you kind of working on, and how did you move through that challenge?
Yeah, you're right. Working hard is a hard part, but actually it's not that hard, right? I think it's just a mindset thing. If you have the mindset that I'm going to work hard, then it's easy. I will tell you, I found the hardest thing early on was emotionally removing myself from the results, right? Because you invest so much, and everybody has it. Like, you will have that one candidate that you really want to place, or that one client you really want to help, and it doesn't work out. And you know, the idea of it not happening after you put in a lot of effort can hurt, especially early on. With time, by the way, even if you're not able to emotionally remove yourself, you'll find that it's a wash. For every process that you worked your butt off to close that doesn't close, there's a process that just shockingly closes without you even putting in an effort. So it's a wash in the end. But early on, that was a big challenge for me, and the mindset shift that I had early, that I think was extremely helpful for me, is being vested in resolution versus results. So it wasn't so much about I have to close this deal. It was more so about I need to get this deal to where I need it to go, and the rest will just fall into place so I can move on to the next thing. Because you find the emotional investment translates into time investment. Like, you're talking to a candidate thinking about another candidate, or worse, you're not even getting on the phone because you're sitting there twirling your thumb because the client said they will call you in an hour with feedback. So, you know, it just became about the process and repetition. If I can't get on to the next thing, then I have a problem. So, you know, we have human natures to overcomplicate things to make ourselves feel like what we're doing is more important or more valuable, whatever. I believe in the oversimplification of things. I am, you know, whether a process works out or doesn't work out, my question is always the same. Have I done everything I need to do to close the process? Have I made sure I crossed all my T's and dotted my I's? If I've done that, doesn't matter what happens with the process. It generally doesn't, because I'm just going to repeat that again, and they'll eventually fall into place. Yeah.
Like, the system kind of takes care of the result. Just focusing on the result, ironically, might distract you. And, like, to your point, you're so obsessed with like placing that one candidate, you lose sight of the other three that you could have spoken with while you were waiting on that other one. So it's just managing your mental state, and then how that translates into activity. Because if you get hung up on something, like obviously a negative interaction, and then you let that color your day, then the rest of your day is shot because you're just upset the whole day.
100%.
So I guess for you, like, there's theory, right? Theoretically, yes, we can all kind of remove ourselves and compartmentalize. For you, how did you do that? Was it just simply just shutting it off, or like reminding yourself, or like, obviously we all know theoretically it's not smart, and we've all been burned. And then, so how did you like really do it from a practical standpoint? And then how does it work from a perseverance level?
So from a practical standpoint, it was really simple. It was, you know, again, about upskilling, because just like an employer would upskill the talent they have internally, you gotta ramp up your client and candidate acquisition to where you have better candidates, better clients out there. And what I've found that helped me out a lot with these processes, a lot of the stuff that falls, especially in a very candidate-driven market, is because you're competing against other agencies, you're competing against internal network, you're competing against vendors that your candidate work with that are sharing the candidate with their other clients, you know. So there's a ton of competition. You're competing against the ridiculous counter offer that just blows everything. So what I've found is being able to go after the passive candidates from a practical standpoint has removed a lot of the competition, or at least mitigated the risk of competition, even if it doesn't remove it directly, because I'm the first guy in, which means anybody else that follows is trying to keep up with the kind of service I've offered my candidates. And I found when I'm talking to passive candidates, I'm able to develop a very different kind of relationship where the competition calls them, they're calling me and telling me what they're pitching. I'm not asking for it. They're literally telling me, what do you think? You know what I mean? So that's one aspect. Another aspect of it was, again, covering the front end. I found that in the middle of a process, a lot of time you're chasing efficiencies or offer management, when actually, if you have asked the right questions and managed the relationship from the very start, if you set those expectations early, then the follow-ups are just a gentle reminder versus like this whole new thing. So if you find yourself trying to manage an offer at final interview, you've already failed. You might get lucky, but offer management should happen on the very first call you have with the candidate, by understanding what their motivations are, what they're missing out on, what are you competing against, what would make them move, what's their jump up and down number, bottom line, all this other stuff that you will learn as you get into recruitment. At least in a big shop, you would absolutely learn that. From a mental standpoint, I think compartmentalizing has come to me easily, especially with the military experience. Like, you have to be good at compartmentalizing if you're getting shot at and you got other shit you got to worry about. But what I will say, and this is not necessarily my case, but I've hired, trained, and managed, literally hundreds of people in this industry. So I've seen it all, or most of it. And what I will say is, if you're not able to compartmentalize early on, like, don't fret, because one of two things is going to happen. You're either going to quit this industry because it's too much, right? Or you're just going to be forced to learn how to compartmentalize because it's just too painful not to. Like, you're going to have to at one point or another, period, right? Otherwise, like, we've all been there. You have nightmares about processes in the middle of the night. I've seen some people get to a point where they're literally frozen because they're so worried about the next thing. But I don't think there's a specific type of person that can't overcome it. It's just a matter of, is it worth it for you or not? So my recommendation is, as hard as it is to do, if you go in the first 6 months almost robotic, and the 6 months is the right time, almost robotic, where you're like, I'm not going to assess what's working and what's not working for the first 6 months. For the first 6 months, I'm going to listen to my manager. I'm going to do whatever the heck they tell me to do because they know it. And I'm just going to follow them blindly. And then I will start creating efficiencies. Then you're going to get wins early enough for that adjustment and the compartmentalization when it needs to happen. You're going to have all this money that you've made as motivation to do it. Because we early on in a career, we have the challenge of not over-investing in doing things one way or another because we haven't seen the results yet. So don't try to force it. Let the results come in and go from there, if that makes sense.
So don't go out of your way to do anything. Just kind of follow kind of the process, gather your learns as you go. There isn't one set way. Everyone has their own way eventually of dealing with it. And if not, it'll break you and you'll leave. So the problem solves itself.
Exactly.
And the people that do remain, you find it what works for you. But everybody has to, at some point, create their own approach. Yeah. And I'd agree with that, because it isn't like something that might work for you might not work for someone else, because you have totally different upbringing, totally different culture, totally different approach. So yeah, I think that's really valid. It's almost like anxiety relief, right? Like, everybody has a different way of releasing their anxiety, whether someone goes out and runs marathons or somebody goes and meditates. It's just, everybody has a different way, but this is just a life skill that any job you probably have to learn.
Yeah, I think mental
especially
health,
this one.
I think mental health and mental well-being in this type of environment, I mean, it's important everywhere, but it's so crucial here. Like, on a personal note, when I met my business partner, who's also my wife, right, and met her at work or what have you, she introduced me to yoga, which was such a huge thing for me, because when I got off work, I couldn't shut off. So, so actually investing in your personal well-being is crucial. So I would do yoga. I remember I'll do it on the weekends as well, but during the week, I would intentionally put it like Tuesday night and Thursday night, I absolutely have to do it. And I go in and do that after work. and then I'm coming in Wednesday morning or Friday morning as if it's a brand new week for me. So something to just break it up. Also, little things like setting up rewards for yourself. Recruiters and salespeople, we love money and we love recognition, but I think we lack self-recognition quite a bit. I think taking a step out of your day and acknowledging the work that you've put in, independent of the outcome, is crucial. If you're 100%, again, and that's the one thing, if anybody watching this doesn't hear anything else I say, that's the one thing that's really important. Like, don't focus 100% on the results, focus 100% on the effort, and the results will absolutely follow. So setting milestones for myself. Today I'm going to get 5 interviews instead of 4, and if I do that, I'm going to treat myself to X, right? So like that self-recognition is crucial, because if you don't, you'll find yourself chasing stuff. Every recruiter with a year's worth of experience has had that month where it's like the 25th and they're working their butt off trying to close a deal. And what they're doing by that is avoiding the opportunity that's right in front of them to build a solid pipeline for the following 3 months. So then you end up going into a cycle where you're always playing catch up, versus if you're effort driven versus results driven, you got to put in the effort to build your pipeline for, let's say it's March, to build your pipeline for April. And one of those deals might fall in the next 5 days, and then you've solved that problem, but you're building on to the next month or what have you. So yeah, I think mental health is really important.
I love it. I think you've given us so many good pieces of advice for people thinking about this. Like, a lot of the folks tuning in, this is really going to help them, not only in recruiting, but in careers in general. But being that so many people are kind of deciding, wavering between this job, maybe they should pursue it, maybe they shouldn't. What would be your advice to them? Like, if you're this type of person, definitely go for it. If you're not this type of, what to watch out for if, this may not work for you.
Yeah.
What should they watch out for? Yeah.
So I think the very first thing you want to look at is, like, am I happy with what I'm doing? Because if you are, then like, maybe this is not, how do I explain this in a simpler way? One of the main reasons why I was really successful at this job is because from day one, there was no backup plan. Sure, I could have gone back into oil and gas, or I thought at the time. Of course, oil and gas dipped after, but I left it at its peak when it was doing great. And I could have easily had the mindset of like, I made it to 6 figures in oil and gas. I'll try this for 6 months. If it doesn't work out, there are jobs out there, which there were, right? I think even the person that eventually became my boss, he's like, we can explore it. If it doesn't work out, we'll still place you, because I'm going to make money off of you either way, which I thought was funny. But then I told him, like, and like, to give you an idea of where my headspace was, I was like, yeah, I'm just not interested in that. I'm not interested in going, like, why would I leave then? I might as well just stay where I'm at, or go to this competitor and make 10K more. So it has to be one of these things, regardless of your background. And I will get into the background and the mindset and the skill sets rather. But regardless of the background or the skill sets, are you somebody that's, willing to take a leap, willing to take a risk? Because there is no position, and there is no industry or opportunity that's going to offer you the chance to double your income, let's say, in 2 years, without some risk on the front end. This is not the stock market. Even that's risky. This is not like, let me invest in S&P 500. I'm going to get a little bit of a return. That's not what this is, right? This is much bigger upside. So you got to be willing to take the risk. So there has to be something you're missing that you're looking for in your next position. This is specifically for people looking fresh as to getting into recruitment. Of course, it's a very different conversation for people already in agency, right? If you are one of those people that's an internal recruiter, and nothing against internal recruiters, and really enjoy what you're doing, and you're like, I just want to go to a different company, agency recruitment is not it. Like, go find a different company as an internal recruiter, because this is a very different job. I find that people that transition from agency into internal recruitment do really well, because they take a little bit of that mindset with them, not necessarily the other way around. There are exceptions everywhere. I don't want to insult anybody, but just for the general masses, that's not necessarily the case. I have found if you are self-efficient and well-organized, or capable of being well-organized, you're going to do well in this job, but not so well-organized in the sense of, my days blocked down to the 30 minutes or whatever. That's great too. But if you are, self-organized in the sense of, you are able to set tasks, prioritize tasks based on potential outcome, and be agile enough, because the more organized you are, the more agile you are to adapt to what's happening, to where one thing falls apart, it's not going to change your day. I always make the joke or state the fact that every single day I have a to-do list. And sometimes, I write the action after it's done just so I can get the satisfaction of putting the check on it. But there's not a single day in recruitment that I've had that was actually a productive day where by 7 p.m. my checklist wasn't longer than it was at 7 a.m. Like there's always going to be things that happen. You have your plans, and then this client calls wanting to reschedule an interview. This candidate, has got this issue, or you get a golden candidate. You're like, all right, drop everything. I'm going to action this guy or this girl real quick. So, are you somebody that's adaptive and organized at the same time? Not organized to a fault, because there are those people where you can go off task, right? Are you somebody that actually enjoys conversations with people and can is good at objection handling? I'm not talking about the script of objection handling. Yeah, you'll get that at the company you work for and you get the training, but actually knows how to navigate a conversation, mirror the person they're talking to. You have bigger circles of friends or what have you. All that stuff is great. Somebody that maybe, not saying that you have to be that, but something I always look for is I really like well-traveled people. I know this sounds weird, but I find that people that travel a lot, especially internationally, are much more open to different cultures, which makes them in the conversation indirectly much more open to understanding different motivations for a candidate. We recruit nationally. I can guarantee you, same exact job, same exact education, same exact experience. A candidate in New York versus a candidate in California versus one in Texas are completely different people. Might as well be in different countries. So being able to have these conversations and mirror them is wonderful. So to oversimplify, again, are you money motivated, right? Are you success driven versus like does the opportunity for success drive you more, or does the fear of failure drive you more? If the success is what drives you more, then go to this job. My former boss used to tell me, and this was a big company, he said, don't be an empire builder, right? I believe you have to be an empire builder to be in this job. You can't be satisfied. Right. If this is the kind of job where at the end of the week, your boss pats you on the shoulder and says, hey, you've done great, and that's good enough for you, it's probably not it. Like when my boss pats me on the shoulder and says, you've done great this week, I know, thank you for acknowledging, but no, I've done it for me. It's not an arrogance thing, because I am literally doing it for the return to me, because I'm in a merit-based environment. So my work better translate into money. And if my boss thinks I've done a great job, but I haven't made any money, that means nothing to me. If I have made the money, it just means that you acknowledge it and you're a great boss. And I'm grateful for that. Understand that in recruitment, if you're doing this right, at the end of the day, you're always going to look in the mirror. That's the best way to describe it. You're either going to be smiling or frowning, but you will be looking in the mirror. If you're the kind of person that's comfortable with that, like acknowledging that you have all the power, regardless of what's happening, regardless of office politics, or this person has that client and this person reaches that candidate at 5, like ignore the noise. If you believe that you have the power and you're the master of your fate, and you actually, or you like the idea of having that, then it doesn't matter. And nothing else matters. This is a job for you, like 100%. I love that. If you're worried about what other people are doing or the impacts of the environment, if you're sitting there saying, the main reason I'm looking is because my boss doesn't support me enough or whatever. And of course, there are times where that's enough for you to want to leave. But, if you are the kind of person that's like, yes, I'm not getting the support. Yes, I'm not getting the opportunities that I want, but I have made the most of every single opportunity I have, and I still feel like it's not enough, then you need to get into a job that's merit-based like this. If you're saying, yes, my boss does not support me, so I can't do anything about it, find a better boss. Don't get into recruitment.
This career, this industry, there's no point joining it unless you're in it for the right reasons. And you waste your own time. You waste everybody's time. Everybody who has to train you. And we've all seen that. You train people who are just like pulling teeth. And you're like, why are you even here? Like, why aren't you even doing this? Like, is this just recreational? Like, because it's not. It's a hardcore business. And you're not really in it for the money. You're not really dedicated to do this. Like to your point, just don't even bother. Just at that conversation, your boss should have just placed you somewhere. But you fought for it. And you were like, no, we're going to do this. Yeah. And not only am I going to do this, it's going to work. Yeah. So I think that's just a nugget of wisdom there, because I hate talking to people who got into it and they're surprised. I'm like, how would you not know this? Like, this is so obvious, because if you did your research, you would know this is very tough. It's a sales job. Yeah. Right? You're not coming in here just to like supplement some hiring. I mean, you're not an unemployment office.
No.
Right?
It's not just a sales
business role.
Yeah. It's not just a sales job. Like, understand, yeah, you can be the best salesman ever, and you also have to deliver on everything you sell. That's where it gets tricky. Like,
Right.
don't be just
Right.
good
Yeah.
at sales. It's not like, all right, I got the deal, I'm going to hand you off to our operations department. You're not handing off anything to anyone. So you will actually find, and that's why I think this is, or I believe that this is much more elevated than your typical sales job, is because you will find sometimes a salesperson will never sell less. A consultant will. Like, I will sell less because I know what I'm capable of delivering or what I'm going to deliver on. And then if I deliver more, then that client is ecstatic through the moon. And I've seen a lot of consultants that, on the first call with a client or a candidate, promise them the world, and then literally don't call them 3 days later because they haven't delivered on what they promised. But like, this is self-induced pain. Like, you're literally doing this to yourself. Like, you're punishing yourself, like just beating yourself. Like, why would you commit to what you can deliver? Because in every industry, I've recruited in multiple industries, candidate and client, that is all they want. They just want to know, here's what I'm committed to, here's what I'll deliver to you. And there is no better sell, I promise you, my best clients, there's no better sell than saying, appreciate the job request, but I can't help you with this one. Maybe it's better if you go to another agency that does this best. I'll even give you a referral. This is my bread and butter. This is what I help you with. I've gotten exclusivity so many more times from that without asking for it than saying, I'm great, you should work with me, forget all the competition. That's not going to work. You know what I mean? I'd rather be the guy that has LeBron James every time than the guy saying, like, let me try my luck with baseball. Like, I'm just not going to do that. Like, I'm good at basketball. That's what I'm going to stick with and go from there. So that's why it's an element. It's like, it's just a much better sell.
I love that. And what is the last piece of advice you would say to anyone who is now really seriously trying to get a recruiting job? Like, what would be the most important piece of advice that you have for them as they really start embarking on this career?
Yeah, this is not a 2-year job change. Like, if you're going to go into it, it's like you said, it's a career and it's a career plan. So figure out what you want to do long term. I always make the joke, I opened up a credit card, and at the time I thought my company was going to be called Quest Recruiting. And I bought a credit card, like I got a credit card the day I joined, or like the day I got the offer from my company. I went to apply for a credit card. I was like, this is going to be my business credit card. I didn't know anything about it at the time, but literally to this day, like the username on that specific credit card says Quest Recruiting. Like, I knew what I wanted to do from day one. Whatever that took, I was thinking maybe a year, 2 years, it ended up being 7 years. But that was always the vision, always the plan. I find that backwards planning is the best kind of planning. So if you have figured out, I want to get into recruitment, that is amazing. That's wonderful, because you've ticked all the boxes, you've assessed yourself, and that's the right industry for you. But that's only the first step. Now you have to find the right company with the right opportunity and the right progression. They're not all created equal. This is as diverse an industry as any. If you don't know anything about recruitment or about sales, I recommend going to a bigger shop. There's plenty of those companies out there. They actually like to hire people with no recruitment experience, quite frankly, and like, don't tell anyone, but that's because people with recruitment experience make a lot more money at the smaller shops than the big shops. So they can't really compete most of the time. Go into a big shop and learn their processes, get this world-class training that they have to offer. There are people that come to me right now asking me for a job at Scott Humphrey. I'm like, and I name off, the usual suspects, like, not going to plug him in here, don't worry. But the usual big players, I'm like, you should go reach out to this person there. Maybe they will hire you, whatever. Go to a big shop, learn everything about the process. Try your hardest to stay recruiting within the same industry, in like even the same roles. Be as niche as you can. In a candidate-driven market. Well, you can't be niche in a non-candidate-driven market anyways. If they tell you like, we're generalist recruiters, don't do that, right? Just don't, right? You might as well be a recruiter then. So like, find a company that has niche markets. Go and learn everything about the recruitment process first. Understand the market knowledge follows, and then it's just the chart goes like that. Right. And then once you have made enough money, I'd say the ballpark range you want to look at, and it's different for everybody, but I'll say, if you're averaging anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 a month in revenue, then consistently, then you're probably ready to go to a smaller shop. Because here's the deal: at $20,000 to $40,000 a month, you're anywhere from $240,000 to $480,000, $500,000 in revenue a year. And the good measure, I like to tell people, if you're at the big shop, and you almost always will never get that. There are some exceptions, but look at your total billings. And if you're making anything less than 40% of that on your W-2, you're not being paid what you need to get paid, right?
Right.
If you want to go the path that I've gone, then of course, grow there and stay there and get to the management.
Right.
If you want to get to billing and making really good money, and maybe this is something that will supplement something else, like I know, Dandan, you do real estate or something like that, then go to a smaller shop quickly, or after you've gotten that experience,
right,
earn the commissions. And by the way, I found also through personal experience with myself and my employees here at Scott Humphrey, I found that if you're a bigger shop averaging 25K a month, at a small shop, you will average 40. You will, because you're not stepping on people's toes. You have a much bigger remit. All the corporate BS is removed, and you're just focused on it, and you go from there. There's no place to hide, but the ROI is much greater. So find the big shops, build up, and like there's little. Sorry, I'm sharing a lot of stuff here, but so hopefully it's all beneficial. But there's little things that you can do that are also going to be really helpful that people don't think about. Like, what does your LinkedIn profile look like? Go find people that are in the industry and look at their LinkedIn profile. If they're successful, they sell the hell out of themselves on LinkedIn. Their LinkedIn jobs, what they're advertising under the jobs, is not the freaking jobs and duties. I don't need that. They're advertising their results, how they separated themselves. And that translates into a resume as well, right? Network with people in the industry, reach out to them, be like, hey, I'm looking at getting into the industry. What are your thoughts? In case you can't tell, recruiters love to talk, especially like myself. So like they will share with you insights or whatever, and establish your network, get to learn about every company out there, take every single interview you can take, gather data and just go out to the market. But like when you go out to a market, be 100% in, not 50% in. The rest will figure itself out. But it is a very, very, very lucrative job if you do it right. You know what I mean? And if you do it wrong, no. And that's also very beneficial, because you're not going to be in recruitment for 3 years and realize you've been doing it all wrong. You won't last that long.
You'll know in 6 months.
Right. You'll learn quickly, and then it's just a matter of making the adjustment and going from there.
Yeah, 3 years of not making money in this job, it's hell on earth. I can't imagine anybody to survive 3 years in a job and make under market. It's just so painful. You would have well gone internal or quit by then. Yeah, no, I love that advice, because so many times people do come to this course and they just think recruiting is simple, because that's the idea, right? Like, oh, hey, I get clients. Let's say you run a consulting business. Oh, I have people that ask me to recruit people. Oh, wow, I could just earn $40,000 by finding a random person and introducing them. It's just not that. It's so much more than that. And you might get lucky. Some people, you might even get lucky placing a friend or two. And then you really go crazy with it. You think you're freaking God on earth. Like, wow, I'm just like magic fingers. But the reality is you just got lucky.
Yeah.
Like with two random people. Because you don't have a recruitment system. So learning at a large recruiting agency, it is the best route. It is the easiest way to get trained up, to learn on somebody else's dime and time. They train you up. But a lot of people, they don't have that luxury. So that's always something that I think people taking this course, you really have to evaluate. Like, you have to make a personal sacrifice, or you have to find an employer. All requires, to your point, heavy networking. Like, it's not just going to fall into your lap. You actually have to go out there, especially if you live in a not popular city and you want somebody to train you up on recruiting and take a chance on you. You have your work cut out for you. It's just not going to be like you live in New York City. There's like 100 recruiting agencies down the street and you live there and you work there. That's not going to be the case if you live in Boise. That's not going to be the case if you live in Montana. It's not going to be the case if you live in Alaska, right? Like, you have to make some real concessions to, like, what am I going to do for this recruiting career? And how do I get through it? So can you give our listeners a way to contact you and a way to pick your brain and see down the line as they build their career, maybe? Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So you can always connect with me on LinkedIn. It's AJ Mahmoud, Mahmoud is my last name. The company is Scott Humphrey Corporation. We have our LinkedIn page, our website as well, scott-humphrey.com. You can email me. I don't have an issue with getting emails. I get plenty of emails that are not worth my time. So I'll look for your email. I'm actually very responsive. It's aj@scott-humphrey.com. I'm not going to give my cell phone, but, shoot, it'll be in the signature on the response or what have you. But honestly, be on the lookout for us. We're growing. We went into this business with the mindset of creating a long-term dividend, very successful company. So we're not looking at like selling it anytime soon or anything like that. We're a year and a half in, and we started out with just me and my partner. Now we're 8 employees, and we'll probably hit 12 to 15 by the end of the year and continue to grow there. So, at a certain point, maybe we get to where we're hiring people that are looking to transition into recruitment. Right now, we're looking for the more experienced individual because we want to make sure we have a solid foundation. You don't want to grow just for the sake of growth, but we're doing well, in the construction space. And to your point about people being in smaller markets, what have you, a lot of companies, and if they're not doing it, they're behind the curve. A lot of companies are shifting to fully remote as well and creating these amazing training programs, to where you're not in an office with a backboard behind, or, you're on a Teams call, or what have you, and doing it. But yeah, I love to network with people. I love to connect. I'm not nowhere near as good as you at it, Dandan, but I try to share insights on LinkedIn, for the hope of somebody random out there that sees it. That's literally my intention behind it. Like, I want the random person that wouldn't have otherwise thought about it to see the post and be like, you know what? Yeah, maybe this is it for me. The one thing I will say is, if recruitment is for you, so we talked about all the stuff to assess, just to wrap that up, while I still have the thought, if recruitment is for you and you found that it is, understand that if you do it, you are literally never going to look for a job again.